This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. The Browns and Eagles joint practice is going on today, and then it ends after today. But I wanted to talk about a checklist of things that I want to see or hear about. Now, it's going to be kind of difficult to see or hear if any of this stuff happens because the Eagles don't allow team drills to be recorded for whatever reason. But these are some things that I want to see some positive reports on, and I'll tell you why I want to see these things. The first thing is going to be, how does MJ Emerson look versus this very deep Eagles wide receiving core, right? It's one thing for MJ Emerson to look good against Elijah Moore, who we hope is really good, but we don't know how good he is yet, right? It's another thing for him to look good against Amari Cooper, but when you see him up against somebody he's not familiar with, like AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, who's a route guy, then you want to confirm that, hey, is some of this stuff with MJ real? Did he fix some of his flaws that he had earlier in his career with some of the long speed stuff? Is all of that done, and is he ready to kind of take a prominent role? It is not just a rotational corner, but maybe as like one of the better corners in the division. So that's what you want to see this week. You want to see if MJ steps up, makes those plays, if he's somebody that we could leave one-on-one in any situation instead of worrying about, hey, what happens here if he gets put in space, or what happens here if he gets thrown in the slot. We don't want to have to worry about that. Another player in a similar situation is Denzel Ward, right? Because Denzel Ward, I think so much attention has been put on his injuries that we don't talk about the actual issue with Denzel Ward. The actual issue with Denzel Ward is not the injuries. He's not injured that much. I think the injuries are actually pretty overblown when it comes to Denzel Ward. He misses like maybe a game or two over the last 3 years. Like it hasn't been as big as an issue as it was like when his career started in 2018. But what has been a big issue with Denzel has been inconsistency. And I think the inconsistency is why we think the injury is such an issue, because sometimes you'll just forget Denzel Ward's out there for long stretches of time because he's not playing well. And that's something that I think is a larger problem for the Cleveland Browns, is that, hey, will Denzel Ward continue to play at a high level? Will Denzel Ward be consistent this year? And you want to see that during joint practice with the Philadelphia Eagles, because you want to see Denzel Ward be consistent, be the corner that we think he can be the corner that we know he can be, but isn't consistently. Like, there are games where Denzel Ward looks like the best corner in the NFL. And there are games where you wouldn't even know Denzel Ward was playing. It's been inconsistent. You would love to see some consistency. Of all of the core players on this team, unfortunately, he's been the most inconsistent. And that's not his fault. Well, partly is his fault. But, I mean, you're comparing him to Myles Garrett. You're comparing him to Nick Chubb. Like, you know what I mean? Joe Bitonio, some of the most consistent guys in the league. But still needs to be just a little bit more consistent. And I want to see that during joint practice with the Eagles. The third thing, Jed Wills. A lot of people have been freaking out every time there's a video where Jed Wills gets mollywopped by Myles Garrett. I don't really be tripping about that one, because Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett will make any tackle look silly, or can make any tackle look silly if he wanted to in a practice setting. It could be Trent Williams. It could be Joe Thomas. You leave Myles Garrett one-on-one, it's not a fair fight. It's just not. It's not a fair fight. I don't care who the tackle is. Myles Garrett is a better athlete than any tackle in the NFL. He's stronger than almost any tackle. He's longer than any tackle. He's more flexible than any tackle. Like, it's not a fair fight. And I think people don't realize inherently the offensive line versus a offensive tackle inherently versus an edge rusher one-on-one is never a fair fight. It's why you don't ever really see these guys go one-on-one. And it's why the guys who can handle a one-on-one are the best in the league, because it's inherently a unfair fight for the offensive tackle. Myles is going to make anybody look ridiculous. So people panicking because Jed looks bad against Myles, I don't really care about that. What I would care about is, hey, does Brandon Graham do what Myles is doing to Jed? Because that's different. Because while Brandon Graham's a good player, he's not that good to be doing that, right? You want to see Jed battle with guys. You want to see Jed go back and forth with these edge rushers of the Philadelphia Eagles. You don't want to see him get dominated. You don't want to see him get beat. You would love to see him dominate, but realistically, you just want to see him go back and forth. If he goes back and forth, then we're fine. If he gets dominated, then we actually have trouble. But I'm so tired of people using Jed Wills' failures against Myles Garrett in one-on-one situation at practice as some kind of notch against him, when it's just unrealistic to expect him to do anything but get beat like that, because that's just what happens. And honestly, it's probably good for him that he gets beat by Myles in practice so often, not because it's good to get beat, but hey, now he has strategies for if he's beat, how he can recover versus some of these elite pass rushers. So now we get to see if we actually have to worry about Jed Wills. That's the big thing. The third thing, well, actually the fourth thing, Obo Okoronkwo versus Lane Johnson. I want to see him have some success in this situation. Elijah Moore was somebody I was looking forward to seeing if he would have success in this spot, but unfortunately, Elijah Moore is not going to be practicing probably for the rest of the preseason. Or if he does, it will only be in team drills. You probably won't get a chance to see him publicly. But that's something that you want to see. And last but not least, let's talk about the linchpin of this entire thing. It's Deshaun Watson. You want to see Deshaun Watson have success, especially in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s versus the Philadelphia Eagles. There's a number of reasons for this. We could go back all the way to a video I did during minicamps about 7-on-7s and why you always have to take success in camp, especially when it's against your own team, with a grain of salt. The main thing I said was, hey, look, sometimes they're working stuff and the goal is for the offense to be successful. So the defense will be in the wrong defense for that play call, just so they can see, hey, this is how this play works. That's how install works, right? We're supposed to go to this look and cover 2. If we get this, we'll check to this. We want to throw this. And then you're basically just running through the play so you can see, hey, this is why this works. This is who we're trying to put in conflict. All those things and above. But when you're in a joint practice, it doesn't necessarily work like that. You're not going to run a play and the Eagles are going to tell you, hey, we're in cover 2. We want you to beat it. No, what you're going to do in practice is, hey, we think this is a 2-beater. They're in 2. Let's check to this 2-beater, right? It's a lot more of a straight up competition in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s instead of a work session, which is when you're going against your own team. So this is an opportunity to see, hey, Deshaun Watson's been lighting it up in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s all offseason. If he can do it against the Eagles, it means something more, because that would be the equivalent to doing it in a preseason game. Honestly, more of an equivalent, because more starters are going to be playing for the Eagles than what the Browns will have at this point. So that would mean a ton. You want Deshaun to look good. Overall, if we're just looking from a team perspective, you really just want the Browns to look like they belong up there with the Eagles. You want them to go back and forth. Again, one team is not going to dominate this. The Eagles just went to the Super Bowl. The Browns are a very talented team. One team is not going to dominate the practice. It's going to go back and forth. What you want to see, ultimately, at the end of the day, is that back and forth. Eagles make plays here, get a sack here. Browns make plays here, they get a sack here. Sometimes some guys are going to look good. Sometimes some guys are going to look bad. You want to see these two great teams go back and forth. That's really what you want to see. You can't really gauge much more out of it other than the competition, other than seeing these guys have success in certain drills. Obviously, one-on-ones are always going to be cool, but you got to take those with a grain of salt, especially like wide receiver DB one-on-ones, because yes, it's very entertaining to watch, but there are ways to win those one-on-ones, or at least make it look like you won a one-on-one as a wide receiver that aren't really truthfully representational of you winning that one-on-one. Or the same thing happens with offensive lineman reps. Like the Dawand Jones rep versus Brandon Graham went viral, and everybody was telling me how great of a rep that was for Dawand Jones, but then all pro tackles chimed in on the conversation. It said, hey, that's not a win for Dawand. They're in a shotgun set. That's going to be at least a 5 or a 7-step drop. And Brandon Graham had Dawand Jones beat by the 5-yard line. That is a sack, actually. Again, it's real easy to make things look like wins when they're not in one-on-one drills. That's why you can't take them 100% seriously. But it is what it is. That's what you want to see during joint practices. That's what you want to see when the Browns go up against the Eagles. And also in the preseason game, because you're going to see DTR start, you want to see how DTR handles the start, right? Does he play just as well? Can he be the backup if he needs to be? I don't think he'll be the backup this year, but there's a real question about, hey, can he be the backup next year? Because he almost looks ready this year. We'll see. The Browns are going to have these questions answered pretty soon, as the last joint practice session is already underway, and I'll definitely be recapping the joint practice sessions tomorrow. So you guys have a great day. Have an even better night. Hit that subscribe button, and y'all have a good night again.